Franchisees are not allowed to operate out of area. They can feel disgruntled that you've taken away some of their income.
That's when the boxing gloves come out. Right?
Exactly. So there you go. I've put my cards on the table.
It feels difficult to argue that one because it kind of makes sense what you're saying, but you turn around and say no one. Good luck. See you later. Go to our competitors. That's quite damaging, I think, to the brand. Instead of having physical territories, it would have a digital territory. If you have the number 100 franchisee in that brand, chance have you got? Welcome to the Full Disclosure Podcast with me, Ed Purnell, the founder of The Franchised, and my co-host,
Jo Middleton, founder of Franchise Business School.
Each episode, one of us will make a statement and have to defend it, while the other person argues the other side. The topics are all from around the franchising industry. This week, it's Jo's turn, so let's get on with it.
Franchisees are not allowed to operate out of area. Full disclosure, I can see both sides of the argument, but today I am arguing that franchisees are not allowed to operate out of area.
Full disclosure, I've not really thought about it that much, to be honest.
Honesty's the best policy, Ed. Honesty's the best policy.
Yeah, I guess it's just because I've spent most of my time in, franchise recruitment marketing. It's not something I've thought about too much. I know I've mainly worked within franchises that don't necessarily have a territory. So I'd like to hear your side first, if that's all right, because then it gives me some way of countering it.
You do this every week. Make me put my cards on the table and then lull me into a full sense of security.
Sales, isn't it?
So I think that when you've got a franchisee, they need to have their area up and running and trading fully before you allow them to take on work outside of their area. If a lead comes in and you allow them to service that lead outside of their area in a territory that is obviously not occupied by any other franchisee at that point, but their territory isn't operating in line with the model, it's not bringing in the revenue levels that you'd expect at that point in the franchisee's life cycle, they then feel that they are reliant on out-of-area work, or can feel that they're reliant on the out-of-area work. They build up a rapport and a relationship with the customer outside of their area. And then when it comes to you selling that territory, they can feel disgruntled that you've taken away some of their income because you've sold the territory to someone else and they've suddenly lost a chunk of their income. They may even claim that their territory isn't viable without out-of-area income and that they have been missold a territory that can't run without additional revenue streams from out of area. And they may even feel that they are due a cut of the initial franchise fee paid by the new franchisee coming on board. So there you go. I've put my cards on the table.
Yeah, it feels difficult to argue that one because it kind of makes sense what you're saying. But let's kind of break it down to like one scenario, and that help me to get an argument right together. So franchisees, they're established, they're doing some PR, they're doing some marketing, and then somebody else from outside of their area sees their service or whatever it is that they're delivering and says, actually, can we use you? If they turn around and say, no, I can't use you because you're out of my area. Okay, who's in your area? Who's in my area who can use your product? And you turn around and say, no one. Good luck. See you later. Go to our competitors. That's quite damaging, I think, to the brand because that person's going to shout more about a bad experience than they are about a good experience, right? So then in that area, you've got a tarnished reputation. So for the next franchisee that's coming in, that's not a great thing for the brand because there's already this tarnished reputation in that area. So yeah, that's my argument.
Yeah, no, I get that.
By turning away customers, that's not good for business. So why shouldn't that person who's the nearest area or the person who's generated that get the lead?
Yeah, I can see that side of the argument. I do think that if the head office can't service the lead themselves and the franchisee is established and operating well and understands that their territory boundaries are confined to those ones, that taking that lead on isn't necessarily going to be theirs forever, and that everything's completely explained fully to the franchisee, that it can work and it could work. However, I feel that it can cause some bad feeling and disgruntled franchisees when it comes to that territory being sold.
So this isn't something that's necessarily included in the franchise agreement, is it?
Out of area. Yeah. So usually it says that it's customer's choice. So if the customer wants to come into the franchisee's territory from outside the territory, then that's absolutely fine. It's the customer's choice to do that. However, if the franchisee was to market outside of their territory, then that is not acceptable, because they're confined by the territory boundaries to where they're allowed to operate. So for a business that's location based, so if, for example, the franchisee is going out to schools and delivering a service in schools, they wouldn't be able to go into a school outside of their territory to deliver the service. However, a parent could enlist their child in after school clubs at a certain school that the franchisee is operating from outside of the territory. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I agree with the, marketing outside of your territory. However, social media, you can't always, I know I talk about social media a lot, but that is probably, a big element to a lot of this. So as a franchisee, I'm going to put out there, hey, we are out there in the world and come and use our service. They can't control it to be only in their postcode, right?
They can. They can't
with a generic post off their personal profile.
Oh no, not a generic post. Say a generic post on the business
or an
page.
Post
yeah, but with their marketing, they can target. So they're only actively marketing within their territory.
Yeah, so like paid for marketing.
Paid for, yes. Yeah.
But that's what I mean, like organic content. That's, I mean, I'm sitting here thinking how I would do it. I would sit as a franchisee, and I would promote my personal brand and explain what I do to generate leads, to generate business.
And you put it out on your personal page, and you can't control if Joe Blogs, who lives in the next territory, who you're friends with on Facebook, sees that.
Exactly. So, what happens in that scenario? It's very difficult. And so I think you can't say that they can't, work with clients outside of their area, because if you've built up that trust and built up that relationship, why shouldn't you get that? It's quite difficult, isn't it? Because can you actually service that person in Scotland if you're down south? Like, is that realistic or not? But maybe they can be the introducer for somebody else at a later point. Maybe perhaps there just needs to be an agreement on a case-by-case basis, which makes it complicated and difficult. But I think if I'm arguing against your point, it would be that there's just so many different scenarios. I think we've just sort of rattled through a few there. That you can't be that black and white. There's so many grey areas.
And what you touched on there, having an agreement, that is something that a lot of franchisors will use when a franchisee is operating out of area. So that's potentially the way that it could be done properly. The only hesitance I would have around that is if a franchisee was underperforming in their own territory or new in their own territory, taking on out of area work.
Yeah. It's a difficult one, isn't it? I think I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, because there's so many variables to the different brands, right? It's different if you're on the like a B2B white collar side of a franchise than it is for a location based franchise. So for example, with a B2B white collar brand, one that I used to work for, instead of having physical territories, it would have a digital territory.
Okay.
So what the franchisees would do is tag a number of target prospects on the database, and no one else is allowed to market to them. If somebody through social media or however they got the lead, then found out that that potential client was tagged, that prospect was tagged on the database, they would then have to go and speak to the franchisee that tagged that person and have a conversation and say, look, I've got this relationship. I think it makes sense for me to take it on. Let's go from there. Or, right, I'm going to pass it over to you, but 5%, something like that, of what you earn out of the back of it should be towards me. So I think there's other ways rather than just location-based territory that people could consider, but I think it depends on the type of brand as to whether or not that works.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are franchises that are set up without any territory, digital or otherwise, that are basically in competition with each other. The franchisees are all sort of you could have me at one end of the street and you at the other end of the street, and we're all going for the same sort of customers.
That's when the boxing gloves come out, right?
Exactly.
I don't like that. No, just too much competition against each other is not good internally.
Doesn't seem fair or right to put. I think a franchise network should be a collaborative, shared best practice rather than let's get the boxing gloves out and fight.
Yeah, and if you're number 100 franchisee in that brand, what chance have you got? You've got no chance, have you? So yeah, territories are important, but yeah, should they be a really thick black line, or should there be that kind of gateways and grey areas that allows for variation of the situation? I think they should.
Well, there's two sides to every argument, eh?
Excellent. Should we call it a day with that one?
I think so.
Awesome. Cheers.
Oh dear.
Franchise recruitment marketing and what I see of it on social media is awful.